Welcome again, folks, to the Washington Babylon podcast with Ken Silverstein. This week, we bring you a great extended interview with Dr. Johnny Eric Williams.
Johnny Williams, it is a pleasure to have you on the Washington Babylon podcast.
Thank you.
You are a valued contributor to the website, and looking forward to talking to you today about the great election coming up next year. But first, can you just tell us give us a little bit of background about yourself, because some of our listeners may not be familiar with your work. What's your bio?
Okay. Well, I'm a professor of sociology at Trinity College. I also chair the Department of Sociology at Trinity College. I've been there for 24 years. I arrived in 1996, and I've been there ever since. And my work is all over the place because I'm a journalist, journalist-trained sociologist. So I do politics, social movements, religion, mass media, science, culture. I do a whole host of things, including science, like philosophy of science and stuff like that. And I write in all those areas, but I'm also someone who has participated in organizing, activism, and I believe that my work should be used, deployed to create a better world for humanity. And that's what I seek to do with it.
Oh, that's a pretty good bio. Sounds good. Yeah. So look, just in general on the election, I, until a few months ago, thought that Trump winning the election was a foregone conclusion. Not because he's so popular, but just because the Democrats seem, and still I have questions about this, the obsession with Russiagate has just been, for the last 2 years now, transformed into Ukrainegate. But the party doesn't really seem to have any sort of message. Bernie had the heart attack. It sort of reminds me in a way of the Republican field in 2016, where you started out with just a huge number of candidates, and out of that, Trump emerged. But in any case, I'm just wondering, do you think, can Trump be beaten? I mean, a few months ago, I wrote a story that we talked about that was a bit satirical, but it just said, basically, he's going to win a re-election, so let's just get ready for 2024. But I'm not sure that's really true. So first off, I just wanted to get your take on that. I mean, can Trump be beaten?
I think he can be beaten, but he's not going to be beaten by someone like Elizabeth Warren, but a surprise candidate who people don't want to be that candidate, that is, the Democratic Party doesn't want to be his candidate, and that is probably Bernie Sanders, because he seems to be getting turnout via word of mouth and not through the traditional channels of elite-controlled media, corporate media, commercial media. And so, he has people showing up at his rallies. About 26,000 people show up by word of mouth only. So just think, if that message got out to people via news media, how that would transform the campaign into literally hundreds of thousands of people showing up at his campaign rallies and so forth. So I still think he's probably even with a heart attack. But I also think that the Democratic Party don't want him as their candidate because he's not corporate friendly enough, because the Democratic Party is basically owned and ran by Wall Street, the very wealthy in the country. So he's seen as an enemy to their profit making, and therefore they try to keep him, keep it on the brownout. That's what you can't ever hear from him. And you know what's going on. Everybody talks about Elizabeth Warren, and now this guy from South Bend, Indiana, Buttigieg, who I don't know why he's anywhere in the thought at all. He seems like a very despicable person, but he's there, and that's who they want. Because those are the kinds of people who look out for their interests, especially Elizabeth Warren. I mean, she's a Harvard professor. She's conservative. She's got millions of dollars. And I think she's basically sold her soul to Wall Street. That's where she's going.
Mm-hmm.
If she had a soul, I don't know if she got a soul. I'm just making I'm making light of that, So I look at it that way, and so I think that Trump is beatable, but not with the candidates that the Democratic Party want to put up. Now, if the Democratic Party puts up Elizabeth Warren, then she's going to have to make a choice, and not, as I hear, pick Pete Buttigieg as a running mate, Kamala Harris or some person like that. It's going to have to be somebody who is like not acceptable to those Wall Street kind of guys, those DLC people.
Well, and so, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the Democratic establishment clearly does not want Bernie to get the nomination. So, two questions, though. I mean, one, despite that, can he, will they block him as, appeared strongly to, it was certainly the intent to block him last time Hillary got the nomination. His campaign seems, it seems to me that it's a stronger campaign this time around, actually. But can the party successfully block him somehow? I mean, that's where I see, the alternative candidates. They're going to continue. I sort of imagine that Bloomberg is, running as part of a broader effort to defeat Sanders, and that various other options will continue to pop up. So what you're saying is the party doesn't want him, but could the party get stuck with him?
Well, I mean, given what they did last time when Bernie Sanders was popular and rising and out in front of Hillary Clinton and so forth, they still went with Hillary Clinton. They rigged the whole thing, right, with superdelegates and so forth. I don't know what the state of superdelegates are now, but the superdelegates are basically establishment-type people from each state, right? And they're not going to go with, I mean that kind of design, that structural design means that they're not going to go with somebody who's considered, and I put this in quote, an insurgent candidate. I don't believe that Bernie Sanders is an insurgent candidate. I believe that all candidates have been, selected by the powers that be. That is, they've already been vetted. They're just giving us the false illusion that we have choice. So that's my take on it. Now, so having said all of that, I do think that Bernie Sanders has something to offer to the general public that the establishment kind of runners are not doing. I also think that Julian Castro has something to offer, but I'm also highly suspicious of him too, right? As a vetted candidate of the power elite out of the state of Texas and so forth, right? So I'm just, for me, I'm highly skeptical of anything coming out of say American politics, especially since the whole system is rigged basically to reinforce the power of the elite in American society. That is the economic and political elite, even the cultural elite of American society, not to challenge it whatsoever. So if Bernie Sanders, I see, and I don't know if I can say this, but he just don't have any, he got zero fucks at all. He just doesn't care because he knows he's on his way out. I mean, he's dying. He's going to die. And so he really don't care, and he's looking out for the people. That's what he's trying to do, right? He's trying to redeem himself in some way from the politics that he's been in, which he's been doing all his life, I understand. But I just think that they're so strongly averse to him that they will not even let him get to the point of even have the candidacy at all. They will. I mean, you used the term block him. I'm just saying it's not even a matter of blocking. It's all about procedure and just working it that way and say this is how things work out. I mean, they know the rules because they created them. Put it that way.
Right. Well, he has to. Whoever. If no one goes in with a majority of delegates, which seems at this point it's still early, obviously, but that seems pretty questionable. Then it's going to be a lot of behind-the-scenes operators, and that's where the if Sanders has the highest number, but without a majority, the odds are, it seems to me, that he's going to be blocked. But let me ask you something else.
By the superdelegates.
Yeah, well, I know there have been some restrictions put in, but still, I mean, if no one wins on the first ballot, if nobody goes in with the majority of the majority needed to get the nomination, then it becomes open to, then you go to a second balloting where, I mean, ultimately the members of the electors are free to vote how they want. I mean, so, I'm just making up numbers here, but if Sanders goes in with, 1,000 and Warren has 800 and Buttigieg has, I never know how to pronounce his name, has 900 or, whatever. I mean, if nobody's got a majority, then, at least as I understand it, then it's going to be up to the delegates to decide. So,
well, it's going to, like you said, it's going to be behind the scenes, though, right?
Right.
It's a brokered convention then, but we haven't seen one of those in such a long, long time because they make sure that the candidate who's going to be the nominee already has those delegates before they even arrive at the convention.
Right.
So that's the thing I'm saying. I mean, I think before even Bernie arrives at the convention, that there'll be some kind of brokered deal already made between people who have, if it's, I don't think it would be Buttigieg, I really don't, but it may be somebody else, who knows. But I know Elizabeth Warren is in the thick of things, and she's basically made her, accommodations with the people who she first said that she would regulate, and now they seem to be regulating her. So I don't know how it's going to turn out. But I do know this, is that system that people put their faith in to create the change necessary to bring about, a better life for them is not possible within this system itself, because it's not designed for the people.
Can I?
That's just a simple fact.
Gotcha. Can I ask something?
Right. Absolutely. I was going to ask you to jump in. Can I just ask a question for both of you, though? And Andrew?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, either one of you. But, I mean, I barely voted at the presidential level, especially being in D.C., a state where, your vote really doesn't matter. I mean, the district's going to go for the Democratic candidate, and so by 92% or whatever. So and because we don't have a simple one person, one vote election, because the process is already so completely fucked up. It's really hard unless there's somebody great running at the local level to get motivated to go out. But I wanted to ask both of you. I mean, I remain utterly cynical about the possibilities of transformation via electoral democracy. At the same time, in 2016, to me, that was just an election where I urged people not to vote. It just seemed utterly pointless. I mean, Hillary Clinton was so completely corrupt. She was such a conventional establishment figure. I mean, the idea that Hillary Clinton was going to do anything remotely progressive was preposterous. I do have a better opinion of Sanders. But I guess I view this election differently than 2016. And maybe being, naive here, but I think if you go back, if Sanders got the nomination, if it was Sanders versus Trump, that would be a fairly stark choice. I mean, it seems to me that that's an election worth voting to get Trump out. So I'm just curious. I mean, are you planning without, you don't have to say who you're voting for, or do if you want to, or who you, would plan to vote for, but it seems to me that, it's sort of like Nixon McGovern in 1972, where there hasn't been a choice if Sanders can get the nomination. That's clear of a choice in a long time. And Trump, I have to say, has turned out to be far worse than I had imagined. I mean, on some issues, there's actually some issues where he may even be a little bit more, I don't want to use the word progressive, but even on some labor issues, weirdly enough. I mean, there are people in the labor movement who support him, a tiny minority, but on NATO, I guess the things that he talked about, I mean, I am no fan of NATO, but Trump hasn't followed through on the few things he talked about that appealed to me. And then the immigration issues, the emboldening of white nationalists, all of these other issues, I mean, he'd be good to get rid of them. So, I mean, is there any way that, could this be a transformative election, or, is it, better to, go third party, to just not, organize, don't vote? How do you, I don't know, could it, could Sanders, I guess what I'm saying is, and I know the two of you are going to have different views on this, but could Sanders get anything done if he won the nomination? I mean, I think he could, actually. I think he would,
I don't
anybody
think so.
who thinks he's going, what? Right?
I frankly think he would face as much obstruction as Trump did in his early days when he was being scuttled on the things that actually were going to have a positive direction, whether it was NATO or Korea or, Russia. I did like his Russia stance.
What's
my perspective on it? Are you talking about Andrew?
Well, Johnny, you go. I wanted Andrew to elaborate a little on the So what you're saying is that on the few issues where Trump wanted to do something interesting, he was blocked and scuttled, and that Sanders would be as well.
It would, in my opinion, trying to read McGovern versus Nixon or Roosevelt versus any of his opponents from the 30s onto this situation is missing the massive factor, which was that both McGovern and Roosevelt had substantial left-wing movements that were ready to go and fight in a way that the arrangement of forces on the left today just frankly aren't. DSA.
Well, I agree with that. Go ahead, Andrew.
I mean, DSA has its virtues. Antifa certainly is, well, that's not even remotely close to being an organization, but that concept is certainly combative and militant, but we don't have a Communist Party USA, a Socialist Party of America, a Mustiite faction, and a Trotskyist party all out there fighting like the old left did, organizing labor. And we don't have SDS, we don't have the Black Panthers or the arrangement of forces that formed the new left during the McGovern run.
Okay, but I agree with you in part, but so what's the answer then? Are we ever going to have that? I mean, how do we get out of this appalling situation we're in? We know that, there was a movement. Well, Johnny, what do you think? I mean, is there any?
Can they hope? There's always hope as long as you're breathing. There's hope. But I would agree that that the comparison between Roosevelt and what he was talking about, Andrew was talking about with these past presidents and so forth in that situation, this is a little bit different. I think this is a global transformation opportunity, not just a national opportunity. In that there is resistance, it's just global, and that resistance has always been in the United States. It's just been among indigenous and black folk. And we lost our minds when in 2008 Obama was elected, and he put most of us to sleep. But there was still a small critical cadre of us who was still trying to wake people up and realize that this is just one ruse after another when it comes to electoral politics in the United States to basically abate the transformation that is needed. That is to get rid of this global economic political system that is depriving people of life itself, and the planet itself is killing us because of what we're doing to it. So I think there is this kind of global connection, and people are making those connections, and we saw them. And with the movement for Black Lives, which is still ongoing, with Palestinians, with Chile, the student movement down in Chile. Now, Chile is at a different moment now, as well as in Bolivia and in Venezuela and so forth. People were talking to each other. I know because I was a part of it, right? So I think that kind of organizing is going on. There's organizing in the South when it comes to the local grassroots level. It's not the political party per se, but it is organizations like the Black Socialist Party of America. It's like the Birmingham election of the mayor down there, insurgent mayor. What some people are getting elected who are not really like party Democrats per se, but using the Democratic Party to get in office. And what happened in Washington in the re-election of a socialist councilwoman up there. So, I just think that the possibilities are right for us to do this, but the change will not come purely through electoral politics. And it will be a long struggle because this has been around for centuries, and it's not going to change easily. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be bloodless. There will be suffering because these people will not give up power easily. And that's the way I see it. So I think there's possibilities. And if Sanders came to power, it would actually speed the process up. Just as I thought when Trump was elected, I wasn't depressed about it. I said this is an opportunity for the United States to make a choice. Right? The people of the United States need to make a choice. That's what I was telling folk. And that is, you see now the bold-facedness of it all. He's taken off the velvet glove. You can see it in an unadulterated form of exploitation and don't give or care about anybody except for the very few. And this is what the outcome is. Now, what are we going to do? Are we going to continue to buy the message? Are we going to, take to the streets as we usually do to push these kinds of necessary restructurings that we need? Not policy reforms, but necessary wholesale, permanent kind of restructuring politically, economically, and culturally so we're at a different place in the future. That's what I think.
Right. So basically what you're saying is that the more important outcome is political organizing outside of the system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at that though, Ken, you'll see that over time. I mean, if you look at every kind of substantial change when it comes to labor, when it comes to civil rights, or any kind of rights in the United States, it has been because people have taken to the streets or have striked and so forth to demand that they have these rights restored to them that were taken away from them. Right, and that's the only time the powers that be will give up is when they're facing tremendous power from the people, pushback from the people, saying this is no longer tolerable. I mean, because basically, I can't remember who said this, but I think it may have been Frederick Douglass or somebody else. But the endurance of your, it depends upon the oppressor's use of force against you and prayer upon how much you're willing to endure as an oppressed person. Are you going to endure, continue to let them do what they want with you? Are you going to resist that? The moment you start resisting is the moment that change begins, and you can't go back.
Right. So, what are the issues that you think are the most important? That what are you personally involved in?
I think organizing wise, I'm not doing anything right now because I'm writing, I'm doing op-eds and stuff like that.
So, but what are the issues that you think are the most important ones to be organizing around at the moment. I mean, as the election, because to me, at minimum, the election offers this opportunity to bring issues to the fore. What are you writing about, thinking about, most interested in?
Me? Drew. Okay, me.
No,
what I'm most interested in, there's several things that I think the possibilities for organizing around. One, immigration. Two, national healthcare system. Three, housing. Right, and then four, infrastructure. Infrastructure that's designed not for the facilitation of profit, but for building infrastructure to maintain humanity's common good. That is infrastructure like not only, I don't think roads should be the way we should go. I think we should be trains, other kinds of transportation, public transportation, so we won't be using cars anymore and stuff like that. I think we should go that direction. And I think that's where I believe that most of the change will come from, when these kinds of personal kinds of issues, people experiencing the kind of bureaucracy that is a for-profit insurance and healthcare industry, and how they basically make life and death decisions for you based on how much profit they can make by denying you services. And I also think, and lastly, is education. Education is another issue that we can organize around also, because a lot of people are going into debt, and that's what the next bubble is, quite frankly, trillions and trillions of dollars. And how to get back to just having an educational system is basically publicly funded, and you can go to school if you want to, and all you have is fees and maybe some room and board, but not that much of room and board. That's what I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Can I ask,
Andrew, what's your take on, I mean, do you think it's worth, participating in the election at all, or your view is just community organizing and, whatever the outcome, so be it?
So my answer is going to be a couple layers, and I actually am going to bring in Johnny for a question. So my organizing is based around accountability and solidarity with organizations and organizers in Providence, because that's the organizing model that we use in the chapter of Showing Up for Racial Justice that I've been a member of for several years now. And they're all saying, look, Bernie's the only hope right now, because the Green Party is just not making it happen in this state. They have blown it in the past 20 years. And it's essentially a garden party of a bunch of crabby old baby boomers and hippies that wouldn't know how to organize a tea party. So that's a waste of time. And so that's one factor that's coming up. The immediate thing that jumps to me about the Bernie Sanders thing is that it presents an opportunity for building a wider, united front of people that goes outside of the electoral realm and lasts after Election Day 2020. And this is something I want to hear Johnny's thought about, is the fact that even though Sanders certainly has diversified his staff this go-round, there's still a very clear class essentialism in a lot of his thinking and a lot of the way that his people express themselves. And there's also that nuance of working class versus middle class representation in the black community that James Baldwin really put on the rack for a real dissection with evidence of things not seen. And I was wondering what your thoughts are about those dynamics, Johnny.
Well, I think you're correct. When you were away, I was talking to Ken about the fact that I think Bernie Sanders offers an opportunity, but he's not our savior. I do think that organizing is the key, right? And that it has to go to push the electoral system, push it off the map. Actually, as currently constituted, it's not working for us, right? So we need, from my perspective, radical restructuring. And Bernie Sanders, basically, as you said, would impede that process because he offered people hope that electoral system will work, when in actuality it's not working at all. So in some ways, then, Bernie Sanders is doing what Black Agenda Report's former editor, who passed away, he was deceased, Bruce Dixon, called, what's it called? Cheap dogging, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's essentially what I think Bernie is doing. Elizabeth Warren was doing it last time also. So I think that's the case, that we do need organized pressure that has this bringing all these groups together around these certain kinds of seminal life and death kinds of issues, so these very personal things. I mean, having a living wage, having a national healthcare system, an educational system that people can go to, that they don't have to go broke over to try to go to school to help advance humanity and so forth. This is a common good. These things are important. As Baldwin said, though, it's like I also wrote this piece. This was remember the piece I wrote about Palestine for you guys in Washington, Babylon, about this misleadership class. And things unforeseen. This is what Baldwin was alluding to, and there have been other people alluding to this stuff too, like Amilcar Cabral, about you have this group of people who originally was saying that they're with you because they're just like you, but there's been this kind of buffer that's created to create this group of people who will forestall the liberation of the people, right, from this oppressive, neoliberal capitalist global system that's out there. And so black middle class folk are some of those kinds of people. I mean, I run into them all the time. I see them in the university, right, in the university setting. These are people who believe that the current system, they can get something from it, they can work with it, rather than see how they also are being complicit in the oppression of other people, class-wise, racial-wise, immigrant-wise, national-wise, internationally and so forth. They're participating in it. So then we become just as bad as those who benefit wholesalely from it, because we play some small part in it, thinking that we're getting something from it. So I totally agree with that. But I don't put I put my faith not in politicians. I think the faith should lie with the people, because the people know that they themselves are the only ones who can free themselves from this morass. I mean, Bernie Sanders can't do it. Elizabeth Warren ain't gonna do it, and damn sure Barack Obama didn't do it for us. So. So we've seen it. I mean, how many times we got to go through it over the centuries to realize that this is all just pretend. It's all makeup. It's just to stop us from going to the logical conclusion of getting rid of this oppression that is dehumanizing and killing us. That's what I think.
Right. So,
well,
Ken, what's your thought?
Yeah. Well, but I guess I ask both of you. So, the situation is admittedly dreary and grim, but what, I guess my view is if Sanders gets elected, it does change certain things. I mean, to view him as a savior or to see him as somebody who's going to, carry out a revolution is getting wildly carried away. His idea of socialism is, but unless he can, which I'm not saying, and he could be blocked, he could walk off of various issues, but you still have, we're going to be, I'm not sure what the choice is going to be in 2020. It's way too early to know. But he would, it seems to me, put in, he would open the door to certain possibilities that are undeniably good. Whether he's a savior or not is another question. But, on healthcare or student debt, on foreign policy, he does open the door to possibilities. And if there is pressure on him from the left, and it seems to me that, he might be able to get something accomplished. To pretend that it's going to be, a revolution is a daydream, but.
No, but you got a point though. You got a point though in this way though. It's just as Barack Obama was a gift to the people, I think, because it allows us to see it doesn't matter who occupies the White House, whether or not they're a woman or whether or not they're black, Latino, they're going to all have that same personality, right? So it provides a level of consciousness about what the possibilities can be, right? And that's what you're saying about Bernie Sanders. And I understand that. Yeah, there are some possibilities, but when they realize, it's like Barack Obama had the movement for Black Lives emerge under his watch because he didn't do anything. People had all this hope, but nothing changed, right? You see what I mean?
No, I agree.
Bernie can push that too. That's what I'm saying. He can make that happen because if he can't do it, they'll make it happen.
I think there's a few dimensions to this that need to be teased away from each other and addressed separately. If we're talking in terms of harm reduction and the idea of Bernie Sanders as a Democrat reversing some of the most obscenely vile police repression of immigrants and minorities we've seen since the Reagan years, that's not something you can deny. He very well could use the power of his office to go after some of these very nasty elements of the police state and roll back a lot of the violence we're seeing. And in that frame of reference, that's a very legitimate and serious, fair conversation. We also could, if the American left can form a viable, unified movement that can get over the hump of the class essentialism on one hand that you see coming out of Sanders and DSA and our revolution, but also that nasty pothole of neoliberal identity politics, that could pressure him from the left to do some very significant and important things. But it needs to be emphasized that Franklin Roosevelt was drag kicking and screaming to every good policy of the New Deal. And even when we got very good things out of the New Deal, he was willing to go and clamp down at the moment when things were going to become revolutionary. The National Labor Relations Act that legalized union organizing and gave unions recognition came out of the sit-down strikes, but very quickly, when there were a series of strikes that were becoming even more militant than what had happened in Flint, he sent in the National Guard and squashed them, and he set a very firm boundary line with the AFL and the CIO in terms of how far they would be allowed to go.
So essentially what you're saying is, and I think I said this before, Ken, is that the president, no matter who's president, has parameters that they can work with within that terrain, right? Okay, all right. So we all in agreement on that, right? So then if there's these set parameters and this is how far they can go, then what I'm saying is that the people have to understand that and realize that the only one that can take them further than that is themselves as a collective. That's the only ones who can do it. So electoral politics. Ken, you have this kind of grim take on it. I'm like Gramsci, right? Antonio Gramsci. I'm pessimistic of the intellect, but optimism of the will. That's the way I look at it, right? I just think that just by the fact that we're human beings existing on this planet means that we have to be optimists. We're breathing, we're here, and what we do is to make these kinds of changes. So I don't care how much of obstacles they put in place for Bernie Sanders, of all of us, is that the change will have to take place. Stuff is not static. Change is constantly in flux. So it's going to have to happen, and it's going to happen because people are organizing to do it. And that has never stopped. That's all I'm saying. I mean, I don't think Bernie Sanders is a revolutionary. I don't expect that from Bernie Sanders. I expect it from Barack Obama. I don't expect it from any president of the United States, right? Because that's just the makeup of what the president of the United States does. It's an imperial president. That's what they do, right? And they maintain white supremacy and classism and all that stuff, right? So, so I just don't put my faith in the electoral system. That's why, that's why I told you, like, when I go into a booth, most of the time, even state, local elections, and I write in a candidate, I just put in these nuts and ovaries because I know what I'm dealing with,
Right.
and I know where the true power lies. The power lies with us. We give our power to these people, and we can take it away by denying them legitimacy. We can take their authority away. That's the way I see it, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I've always been very, very reluctant to vote. I feel like it, only encourages them. So I don't know. I don't have any illusions about the, this being a potentially, revolutionary moment.
No.
But I would like to see Trump gone.
You and me both. I think all of us want to see him gone.
Yeah.
And we're not going to, So in the end, I don't know. I mean, I don't know who ends up getting the Democratic nomination. We may have, maybe it ends up being a Hillary type candidate, which would
I hope not.
Yeah.
My great fear, my total fear is that what happens is the Democrats blow this again and they give Trump not just a plurality, but a majority, which delivers him a mandate,
Mm-hmm.
which is when the real floodgates to hell open up.
Well, but see, I mean, you guys, I see something different happening in the red states. I see them resisting Trump. They're not electing these candidates. They're not doing it. I mean, even Mitch McConnell was facing a tremendous challenge in his own state. So I'm just looking at
there's definite pushback. It's just a question of, and that's why, it does depend though on not just at the presidential level, but I mean, we're stuck in this. We have this dilemma of a completely dysfunctional democratic system that, where choices are very, very narrow, and anyone elected, the opportunities are very constrained. But I mean, Republicans have lost. People who Trump supported have lost in some very close votes. So, I don't know. It requires organizing and voting. I mean, one doesn't have to. Yeah, I mean, I look at our political system and it's so entirely broken. I mean, to think of it as democratic in any way is, you go, you vote. I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, the money dominates the process entirely. Like you were saying, Johnny, I mean, everyone gets vetted. But I mean, it's, better to, I'm somebody who has frequently not voted to protest. And this time around, I guess it just depends on how, the process works out. And, but I can't see I think, Andrew, you have the idea that nothing's going to happen without a political movement is absolutely correct. But it's a different dynamic with Trump in office or out of office. So,
that's undeniable.
But I don't know. I don't want to make it, I mean, my God, there are Democrats, what happens if Michael Bloomberg becomes the nominee? I mean, that's far-fetched, probably, but, I mean, he spent, we just don't know. So I don't want to draw a line in the sand and say it's always going to be worth voting, because I have boycotted more elections than I've participated in. But it just seems to me that, there's an opportunity around the election, even if it's, an organizing opportunity. Like if that's I don't know if that's going to happen, but it just seems like a critical moment. And 4 more years of Trump would be very sad for the country. I mean, a disaster. So, I mean, I look at it, just putting foreign policy aside, the domestic consequences of Trump's reelection would be really pretty terrifying. So, I mean, the new, how many people just got kicked off of food stamps?
7 million.
How many?
I think it was millions. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 3 million. So, anyway, I don't know. I don't want to come, I have never been I am always been equitous, not a member of either party, obviously. But I guess at this moment I am worried about the future in a way that leads me to think that, voting, if there's a decent candidate, is a worthy endeavor.
Well, I think also we have to look at it in terms of when it comes to consciousness raising and getting people to embrace their own efficacy and power. It's a process. You have to go through these various hoops in order to arrive at where you embrace your power to make the change collectively that you need to make. And voting is a step along that way. You vote, you think that's going to do it. You participate in party politics, you think that's going to do it. Then you don't see it. I mean, I know I went through these phases myself of becoming, right, and saying it's not going to work that way. It's going to work for some people, a few people, but it won't work for the masses of people that need it. So I think that you need to take away, the fact that we're still becoming. And hopefully our nation can survive this, and we can still become, and we can be better.
I think Glenn Ford at Black Agenda Report has raised a couple issues that are noteworthy. The most prominent for me being the idea that there is no going back to the old consensus politics of the post-Cold War neoliberal period that was essentially Bush, Clinton, Bush 2, and Obama. We've gone over a hump. And then second, regardless of what happens to Sanders, that's going to be a mass moment of political awakening because either he gets the nomination stolen again and there's sort of further disillusionment with the Democrats, or B, he gets into office and Nancy Pelosi and Charles Schumer shank him on day one.
Right.
Shake him. Yeah, let's go. Yeah. You had me laugh there, but it's true. It's true. It's true. It's true.
The senator from Citibank is going to murder him on the day he gives his State of the Union.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is a moment of education that goes far beyond the individual level kind of development and arc of political education that it sounds like the three of us have all experienced in the same sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, that takes you to the level of, forget it, I got to do it myself. I got to go out there and make the sacrifices. So, it's something.
Yeah.
That's the stark reality of it all.
Yep. So, Johnny,
Yeah.
When we originally started the conversation for this podcast, part of what I wanted to do and bring into this is an idea of a little political education around this cultural Marxism conspiracy theory thing. Because you've got a really great analysis and an understanding of the theory in a way that I think can actually speak to some of these Trumpkins who have a mad idea about what Marxism is that just honestly doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's not just them. There are other people in these other various kinds of lefty organizations that don't know what it is either, and how to get there. But
yeah,
for me, I mean, most people think that I'm a Marxist, right? I am partial to Marxism. I'm partial to black feminist theory, black radical feminist theory. I'm partial to a whole bunch of other things. But they all make up me. So for me, I'm a part of, I think, Tony Montero will tell you that black radical tradition is what I do, right? And that's all a part of what we do. And this cultural kind of approach to Marxism itself is somewhat limiting, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to go holistically. Some people who confine themselves, you call it class essentialism, they see all these other kinds of oppressions as reductionist to class. If you only got rid of the class problem, it'll get rid of all those other kinds of things. But, I work along those kinds of lines. But what specifically do you want me to address with that, though?
Well, maybe I'll just guide this. There are about as many variations of Marxism as there are flavors of Baskin-Robbins.
Yeah, like there's many flavors of capitalism, but the one that's dominating now is corporate capital. Yeah.
And within that spectrum, there's been Marxists and Marxist groupings that have been, very awful, whether it was the Khmer Rouge or the groups around the earliest incarnation of DSA, which was on the worst side of the New York teachers' strike in 1968, or the Marxists in Germany who voted for World War I to start.
Well, look, it depends on how doctrinarian are you. Are you going to be driven by the dogma? Or are you going to be driven by what the people need? Right? For me, I think it's important that Marxism, one size fit all, doesn't work. Right? It depends on the locale. There are different kinds of location, cultural kinds of inputs, and so forth. I actually got this idea from Angela Davis. Yeah, right? This way of looking at the world when she came and she spoke at my graduate institution, Brandeis University, and when someone stood up in the audience and said, well, you want to bring the USSR to the United States, she'd go, no, not really. I want to bring what fits the American mentality, the American sensibilities of how to be a socialist, and on and on, have a proletariat revolution. And the same thing down in Cuba when I was down there about 3 years ago with a conference down there, and Raul Castro's daughter, made the same kind of connection that the kind of revolution that is a process of becoming is in Cuba is not going to be the same for anybody else except for Cuba. And, so that's important. So when people then try to enforce on other folk their own kind of doctrinal way of being, that's not going to work for me. So that's one. Number two, you have folks. I don't know. You guys know who Adolph Reed Jr. is, right?
Oh God, yes.
Okay, all right. So Adolph Reed Jr. has this idea that it's all class. And I'm not with that, but he also has a nuanced analysis about Marxism, right? He's a Marxist and stuff, but when he talks about race, it's a different kind of way of talking about it too. But he's still trying to reduce it, pigeonhole it into this kind of class analysis that is very limiting, which I don't think it should be. Race and patriarchy, these things operate independently of, but also in conjunction with class. They're not separate. As a black radical kind of trained feminist that's who I was trained by. People like M. Jackie Alexander. who was very good friends with Audre Lorde and so forth. I got the idea that it's important to see that the world is way more. It's interconnected. It's we together, but they're also independently operating. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So some Marxists can't make that kind of connection, and many Marxists themselves, they can be very patriarchal, can be very racist, and can be classist. Even though they think they're not, they are, because they think that they're leading people to the revolution, when it's the people who will lead them to the revolution. So I'm more along the lines of, I don't know if you've heard of this guy. He's deceased now. He wrote a book called Pedagogy of the Oppressed, Paulo Freire. Right, I'm along that kind of lines. I want to have a good give and take between people interacting. So in my classroom, I do the same kind of thing. I want students to talk to me so we can expose our ignorance together and learn from each other, right? And come to see our power to transform the world. That's the only way you do it, when you question authority and so forth. From my perspective, using Paulo Freire. So, I mean, it's those kinds of things I think that are important to understand when it comes to this idea about cultural Marxists. I think that people like Michel Foucault, who's these other kinds of, I look at them as cultural kinds of Marxists. Zizek, who's basically a virulent, nationalist, as well as a Eurocentric racist. Those people and stuff. They are caught up in their kind of little milieu and don't realize that there is no universalism in the way in which they have a standard that can fit to everybody. That's the way I look at it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And my major, what frightens me the most is with this cultural Marxist conspiracy theory thing from the alt-right, which conflates DSA, progressive Democrats, the regular Democrats, and the Bolsheviks.
That's muddy in the water. That's just muddy in the water right there.
Right.
They trying to make them all sound like they all the same thing when they're not. I mean, I post a lot of stuff I read from around the world and stuff like that. But one thing we should always keep in mind is that a lot of times one can learn from people who you least expect to learn from, and that we got to let go our points of views about who has the knowledge and who has the expertise and stuff. I learn a lot just by talking to people every day. They teach me a lot. That's what, I mean, I never stop learning. And when I go overseas, I'm taking off for South Africa in February, right? When I go over there, I'm going to be hanging out with the people of South Africa, just everyday people, just talking.
Right.
So, yeah.
We've talked the election, we've talked the alt-right and its various conspiracy theories.
Mm-hmm.
What other ground can we cover? Who do you like for the Super Bowl?
I haven't. You know what? I haven't been watching this. I haven't been watching it, and actually, since they did this to Kaepernick, I mean, I stopped watching. I used to watch it religiously, right? But now it's just like, I'm just not watching it anymore. Plus, it's a very violent sport, which I played when I was in college and in high school, and still suffer from some of the injuries from that. But I'm not interested anymore. I'm really not. That's one of the takeaways from Kaepernick, I guess, is that, I don't want my son playing football or nothing like that either, so it's just too dangerous.
Right.
Yeah. So they can play soccer. My daughter rides horses, so that's an expensive sport. But no,
anyone
football, I don't
care.
Yeah, anybody but the Patriots. I know you hate Tom Brady. I will follow them because I got a lot of friends up here. And Drew is up here. He's up here. He's up, in Providence. Yeah. So the Patriots are big and stuff like that. So I'll tolerate it. But my team is the Oakland Raiders whenever I watch them. But I can't stand them now. Yeah. So that's it.
Right.
But I haven't watched any, but not too much. I know they losing. That's all I know. I can only tell you that. I don't know what's up with that, but maybe Tom Brady's he's finally declining. At least you hope so, right, Ken?
I'm hoping. I am hoping.
Well, who's your team, Ken?
I like the. I always did like the Raiders, actually. But I also like the. Yeah, I always like the Raiders. I like the Seahawks until.
They lost last night, I hear. So, didn't they lose last night? Yeah.
I think so. I wasn't watching. I like
but nobody
where they got when they had Marshawn Lynch and Richard Sherman.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, that was a cool team. So, but
you guys y'all don't watch? I watch Premier League soccer though. Only because a friend of mine in Canada got me into it. Premier League soccer, y'all don't watch that, do you?
I watch South American.
Oh, okay, all right. I do the European circuit, so
yeah,
I like Liverpool.
Yeah,
that's my thing. Yeah, but anyhow, all right. But anything else y'all want to talk about?
I think we're good.
Okay.
What do you think? Here's an interesting one. Palestine solidarity, and where do you think things are going with that over the last few years?
I can only tell you that I think it's getting better, but in the academy, as I wrote in the last piece with my colleague, I just think we're loaded with a bunch of people who are definitely afraid of the Israeli lobby and the pro-Israel academics who basically bully people into silence. That's what they do. So, I mean, I don't think it's going well in academia, but there is a small and noisy cadre of people who are starting to push back and not taking the bullying anymore. And I'm a part of that group. And most of that cadre is young, black, Latinx, or either Asian, right? That's what you get. And they're pushing back because of identification and so forth. And then you have just the Palestinians themselves or other Arabs who are pushing back, who've been doing it all along. But the solidarity for me means that it's not just, oh, I'm with you, I'm thinking about you, thoughts and prayers, all that stuff. It's about also engaging in action that may get you have to take some risks, right? May get you fired and all this other stuff. So that's what these folks are doing. They're writing about it, they're writing books about it, and they're pushing for policy changes by the U.S. towards Israel itself so that the Palestinians can live and get their lands back, so at least some of it. I think overall, it's probably going to be between them a one-state solution because the economies are already integrated, and the electrical grid is already integrated, and everything else. It's only going to be one state. It's going to be a secular state, though. That's the way I look at it. But solidarity.
But the atmosphere has improved in academia a little bit. Or is it still?
Yeah. I'm saying it now because there's a critical mass of people who are willing to put themselves out there. Yeah, but in the mainline professional organizations like the American Sociological Association, there's tremendous resistance to even saying that we support our Palestinian colleagues, let alone the boycott. Just say you support our Palestinian colleagues and their experiences, to mention the word occupation, anything like that, it's not going to be heard in that organization because they fear that the money will be taken away from them by the government, somebody who's a part of the Israeli lobby who's highly placed in the government will take the money away from these organizations. That's what's going on. And then also ruin people's careers. It's really a big problem because every time I write about Israel, death threats follow.
Right.
So that's a part of it too. And that's been going on since since 1988 when I was at Brandeis University. That's been going on because I was one of those people saying because the apartheid movement was going on and how Israel was closely connected to apartheid, that Israel itself was an apartheid state. So that was new, and that really got me into trouble. And I got death threats from Israel and all over the place as a grad student. So that's been going on a long while.
Right. Yeah. And basically not a whole lot of improvement.
Well, I mean, what you find the improvement is what I find hope with is that there are young Jews in the United States who see that this is a problem and they're not supporting it anymore. So and they're resisting, and I really like that. I got there are some people who there's this one student at my college who said, that's two actually who said that I make them uncomfortable, so they want to take my classes. They Zionist, and they belong to Hillel. And one student has gone so far as to try to change her major in the last minute because she said that I make her uncomfortable because of my pro-Palestinian stance.
Holy shit!
Yeah, that's where it is. Okay, but I mean, it had nothing to do with me. This has to do with everything with the student. I mean, I don't know why you need to be comfortable trying to learn. Education should be very uncomfortable for you, but the class wouldn't be talking about Palestine. It'd be talking about racial genetics. That's what I do too. So, but this person felt like they couldn't be in the room with me. This two-state solution out of Oslo and all that other stuff it's just been a one big lie.
Okay.
And there's been ongoing settlement and taking of land from Palestinians, even now in Hebron and taking of the market in Hebron this week, right, to build settlements, which has been condemned, right, by the international community. They're still doing it. It doesn't really matter because, I mean, pretty much they have thoroughly taken most of the land and it's been thoroughly integrated, right? So, I mean, I don't see any option. I mean, I don't think the Israelis are willing to give back land that they, basically torn down other people's houses and put their own stuff up in structures and infrastructure, which is an apartheid-like infrastructure, but it's still there. And I just don't see that. I don't see how that's going to be possible unless the Israelis truly wish to have their own nation state in a lasting peace with access to the sea, giving back the land that was taken during this occupation, and ensuring that they have borders that safeguard them, their air, as well as they have their own military and all this other stuff. And I don't see the Israelis doing that.
Gotcha.
I just don't.
That makes sense.
I don't see it happening. I just think it's going to be one secular state. They really have no choice as far as this integration goes of all of this stuff. I mean, because everything's integrated there. The economic structure and electrical grid, water, everything.
That makes sense. Thanks for listening, and be sure to tune in next week. This is the Washington Babylon Podcast, hosted by Ken Silverstein and produced by Andrew Stewart.